I've always wondered how far a full tank can take me in my car, and if the manufacturer's fuel consumption figures are accurate. So I recently had a long trip which required me to drive from Polokwane to Pietermaritzburg. So I figured this is the perfect moment for me to test out the fuel consumption for my car. The car in question is the VW Polo Vivo 1.6 Highline. So for benchmarking purposes for this test, the car has a 45-liter tank and a claimed manufacturer's average fuel consumption of 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers, which will give you about 726 kilometers on a full tank. Factors to consider during this trip is that number one, I'll be driving 120 kilometers per hour, keeping to the speed limit. Number two, the car was not heavily loaded. Number three, the aircon was off throughout the whole trip. As you can see on the map, from Polokwane to Pietermaritzburg, it's 800 kilometers. So that is the test to see if one full tank can take me that far. As you can see, I refueled 44.98 liters for a full tank. The trip began around 5 in the morning. Plugged in my Android Auto, set up Waze for my destination, and I was ready to go. Hopped onto the N1 and headed south. Before taking on a long trip like this, it is always advisable to check your car. Check your oil levels, check your coolant levels, check your brake lights, check if all your indicators are working, because you'll be changing lanes a lot on the highway. About 1.5 hours into the drive, my fuel consumption was looking good. I was doing 17.5 kilometers per liter, which is 5.71 liters per 100 kilometers. And my fuel range was showing me 660 kilometers left in the tank. And I still had 627 kilometers to go to my destination. Things were looking good. My fuel range had improved to 680 kilometers left in the tank. And also my consumption improved to 17.6 kilometers per liter, which is about 5.68 liters per 100 kilometers. As I kept going, the fuel consumption improved even further to 17.7 kilometers per liter, giving me about 3 hours into the drive, I was passing Johannesburg and I had driven 318 kilometers and had a fuel range of 660 kilometers left in the tank. For those who know the South African roads, you can tell that now I had left the N1 and I was on the N3 heading south. Because I was approaching 4 hours on the road non-stop, I decided to take a short break by heading into Petrol Port N3 just to stretch a bit and get some food. During my stop, I went over the numbers. So I still had 444 kilometers to go to my destination. And I had driven 360 kilometers with 640 kilometers left in the tank. And my fuel consumption was 18.1 kilometers per liter. Like I said, it was just a short break to stretch out my legs. I didn't stop for more than 30 minutes. Soon after that, I was back on the road. I know they always say you cannot praise a fish for swimming because that's what it's supposed to do. But at this moment, I couldn't help but appreciate our South African national roads. SANRAL is doing a good job. At least something is still running well in our country. Four hours into the drive, I still had 550 kilometers left in the tank, and I had driven 414 kilometers. And that's the hour when my next bar dropped. Five hours into the drive, my next bar dropped. I still have 430 kilometers left in the tank. And I had driven 548 kilometers. Approaching the 6th hour mark after driving 595 kilometers, my fuel range was 400 kilometers left in the tank, and my fuel consumption had improved to about 18.5 kilometers per liter. And as you can see, my speed was no longer 120 kilometers per hour. It was between 80 and 100 because I was approaching a place with too many curves on the road and too many trucks. So due to the reduction in speed, the fuel consumption improved. Right on the 6-hour mark, I was at half tank and my fuel consumption was 18.7 kilometers per liter, which is about 5.35 liters per 100 kilometers. So like I said, due to the reduction of speed, that's why my fuel consumption improved. And at this time I had done 641 kilometers. I can honestly say I'm quite impressed by this car. It is very fuel efficient. I could not believe the numbers I was getting. The lowest fuel consumption I've seen was 18.9 kilometers per liter, which is about 5.29 liters per 100 kilometers. Looking at the distance that I still had to travel to my destination of 141 kilometers versus the range that was left in the car of 380, it was clear to see that I will arrive at my destination with some fuel to spare. From here on out, I was just cruising and traveling at ease because the fuel that I still had in the tank would cover the distance left to my destination. From here on out, the anxiety was gone. I was just enjoying our South African national road. Seven and a half hours into the drive, another bar dropped. My fuel consumption was still the same. I had 180 kilometers left in the tank and driven 783 kilometers. It was clear to see that I will arrive at my destination with some fuel to spare. So I was calmly just easing through until I arrived. Almost 8 hours later, I had arrived, 807 kilometers later, from one full tank. I can say I'm quite impressed with the car because I have done more kilometers than what the manufacturer claimed. The car still had a range of 150 kilometers to go. I can safely say that with one full tank, you can go at best 850 kilometers with this car. Thank you.